You just inserted a needle into your vein, or you inhaled a puff of smoke into your lungs, or you snorted a bit of powder through your nose. You haven't even finished exhaling yet. You haven't even put the tool down yet. But inside your body, a molecule has already rushed into your bloodstream, crossed the blood-brain barrier, that biological wall that most chemicals on Earth cannot pass, and touched millions of neurons in your brain. Then it disappears. The half-life of heroin in your blood is only 2 to 6 minutes. That molecule itself has almost ceased to exist before you can even feel what it's doing. But its devastating consequences do not disappear with it. They last for hours. The addiction lasts for years. The changes in your brain can persist for decades. And the question is, if heroin disappears that quickly, what is really staying inside your body? I want to be straight with you right from the start. This is not a video that lists symptoms and then concludes that drugs are bad. That kind of content has its place, but it doesn't explain the mechanism. And not understanding the mechanism means you don't understand why someone wants to stop, knows they're destroying themselves, but still cannot stop. In 1898, Bayer marketed heroin as a safe, non-addictive morphine withdrawal medication. Less than 2 decades later, hundreds of thousands of people were addicted to it. We paid the price once for not understanding the mechanism. What I want to do today is follow the journey of that molecule, the chain of chemical transformations, the neural pathways it hijacks, the organ systems it rewrites one by one. And when you understand why heroin does what it does, the question, why can't they just stop, becomes an entirely different question. Not because I say so, but because you see the mechanism. That is the kind of understanding that changes how you look at a person. To understand what's happening inside your body, you need to know what heroin really is. The chemical name for heroin is diacetylmorphine, literally morphine with 2 acetyl groups attached. And here's the first thing that might surprise you. Heroin itself produces almost no significant effect at the receptors in the brain. It is a prodrug, a pharmacological precursor, a molecule designed to turn into something else after entering the body. And what it turns into is not one substance, but a chain. Heroin is metabolized into 6-monoacetylmorphine, abbreviated as 6-MAM. 6-MAM turns into morphine. Morphine turns into morphine 6-glucuronide, or M6G. 4 substances in sequence, overlapping each other, each with its own properties at the receptors, each existing in the body for different amounts of time. A 2023 review in the journal Translational Psychiatry states it plainly. Heroin users are not using one drug. They are using 4 at the same time, each with its own distinct addictive properties. This metabolic process happens almost immediately. Enzymes in the blood and organ tissues break down heroin at a rate that classic research by Way and colleagues shows is at least 50% hydrolyzed after just 20 minutes, and in many cases nearly completely. But here's the part that really matters. The reason heroin is more dangerous than morphine is not because it is stronger at the receptor, but because it reaches the brain faster. The 2 acetyl groups increase its lipid solubility, and the blood-brain barrier is essentially a lipid membrane. Heroin crosses more easily than 6-MAM, 6-MAM more easily than morphine, and morphine more easily than M6G. The speed decreases with each step because lipophilicity decreases. A 2019 study in ACS Chemical Neuroscience proved that 6-MAM, not morphine, is primarily responsible for heroin's rapid effects. Heroin is stronger because it delivers more 6-MAM into the brain, and faster. Think of it like a multi-stage rocket. The first stage is heroin. It burns out almost immediately, but its job is to deliver the later stages, 6-MAM, morphine, M6G, into orbit inside your brain, and they continue working for hours after the first stage has disappeared. The speed of brain penetration also explains why the route of administration matters. Intravenous injection peaks in 1 to 5 minutes. Smoking through the lungs is nearly equivalent. Snorting through the nose is slower. Addicts eventually switch to injecting not because of preference, but because their brain has learned to demand speed. Heroin is synthesized from morphine, and morphine is extracted from the opium poppy, a plant humans have cultivated for over 6,000 years. When heroin enters your body, the metabolic chain strips away the acetyl groups one by one, sending it back down the synthesis pathway to the exact morphine it was made from. Your body is dismantling the molecule that the laboratory assembled, and it is precisely those dismantled pieces that are destroying you. The next question is, what do those substances do when they reach your brain? There are probably 2 states you feel regularly, pain and pleasure. Pain screams, "Stop!" This is dangerous. Pleasure says, more, do it again. But sometimes the body needs to turn off pain and turn on pleasure at the same time. After giving birth, so the mother bonds with the child, or while hunting to forget exhaustion and injury. The natural mechanism for this is the opioid receptor. Your body has its own endogenous opioids, endorphins when you laugh, enkephalins when you exercise. They bind to mu-opioid receptors, regulate pain, regulate stress, and create a feeling of safety. But when the body uses natural opioids, it releases a very small amount in the exact places needed, with mild and localized effects. A sprained ankle hurts less, a sad memory softens. You feel joy when reuniting with an old friend. Heroin does something completely different. It floods every opioid receptor in the entire body at once, like the difference between a gentle single note and a full symphony exploding at maximum volume. Every pleasure-regulating cell is activated simultaneously. Pain disappears, not just physical pain, but emotional pain too. Anxiety disappears, the body feels warm. Everything feels perfect in a way no natural experience can create. And that is exactly what creates the problem. Your brain is not designed to handle this level of pleasure. The reward center is overwhelmed and draws a single conclusion. What you just did must be fantastic for survival. Do it again. But you will never feel that level a second time. Now I want to explain exactly what happens at the neuron level. The central neural pathway here is called the mesolimbic pathway. It starts in the ventral tegmental area, or VTA, where dopamine neurons originate. From the VTA, dopamine is sent to the nucleus accumbens, the reward center, where the feeling "this is good, do it again" is generated. Signals also go to the prefrontal cortex, which controls decision-making and impulse. And here is the most important scientific point. Heroin does not directly pump in extra dopamine. In the VTA, GABA neurons act as the braking system. Normally they inhibit dopamine neurons and keep everything under control. Heroin, through morphine, binds to mu receptors on those GABA neurons and inhibits the braking system itself. The brakes are released. Dopamine neurons fire freely. A 2018 study in eLife calls this disinhibition and concludes that this disinhibition mechanism is the key driver reinforcing heroin use. Think of a car parked on a hill. Heroin doesn't step on the gas. Heroin releases the brake. The car rolls down not because of added thrust, but because the force holding it back has vanished. But heroin doesn't only affect dopamine. It impacts the amygdala, which processes fear and stress. It interferes with the CRF, norepinephrine, glutamate, and serotonin systems. Shockwaves spread to nearly all the major neurotransmitter systems in the brain. And this is where I want to introduce a model that completely changes how you understand addiction. George Koob and Nora Volkow, respectively directors of the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism and the National Institute on Drug Abuse, described addiction as a three-stage cycle in Lancet Psychiatry and the New England Journal of Medicine in 2016. Stage 1. Binge and intoxication. Dopamine surges in the basal ganglia. You use heroin and feel amazing. Stage 2. Withdrawal and negative emotions. The extended amygdala is activated. The stress system turns on. You feel terrible without heroin. Stage 3. Preoccupation and anticipation. The prefrontal cortex becomes dysfunctional. You lose impulse control and every thought is dominated by heroin. What Koob and Volkow point out is that addiction does not stay in stage 1. It shifts from positive reinforcement, using for pleasure, to negative reinforcement, using to escape suffering. Images from Volkow's lab show that chronic use gradually reduces D2 dopamine receptor density in the striatum, meaning natural pleasure sources, food, music, love, gradually lose their ability to activate the reward system. Heroin becomes the only light still working in a room where every other bulb has gone out. So if the first time using heroin feels that powerful, why don't you feel amazing forever? Because your brain fights back. When mu-opioid receptors are continuously activated at intensities far beyond physiological levels, the brain responds by reducing the number of receptors, a process called receptor downregulation. Fewer receptors mean you need more heroin to achieve the same effect. That is tolerance. But the brain doesn't stop there. The remaining receptors also become less sensitive, desensitization, producing a weaker response to the same stimulation. You need even higher doses. And here is a pharmacological point I think everyone needs to know, because it explains why heroin addicts die. You develop tolerance to the pleasurable effects, euphoria, pain relief faster than to the dangerous effects, respiratory depression, slowed heart rate. That means over time you need increasingly higher doses to feel anything at all. But that dose still has the same potential to kill you. The gap between the dose needed to feel something and the dose needed to die narrows until it almost disappears. At the same time, something even more devastating is happening to your reward system. The hedonic set point, the baseline your brain considers normal, has shifted. Not having heroin is no longer returning to normal. It is falling below normal. It's like someone reset the thermostat in your house. The new room temperature is freezing and heroin becomes the only heater you know. In the early stage, you use heroin to reach heaven. In the later stage, you use heroin to avoid hell. Heroin shifts from a supernova of pleasure to mostly numbness, drowsiness, and relief from withdrawal. You are no longer using it to feel amazing. You are using it to feel normal. And alongside all of that, the physical structure of your brain is changing. White matter, the pathways that transmit signals between brain regions containing information, deteriorates. The prefrontal cortex, the center of decision-making and impulse control, has impaired function. Brain imaging studies show that chronic heroin users have significant structural changes compared to healthy controls, and these changes make it harder for them to make decisions or respond appropriately to situations. The stress system also no longer functions normally. CRF and norepinephrine are chronically activated. The brain is in a constant state of emergency, even when there is no external threat. Koob calls this allostatic load, the burden the brain accumulates when it must continuously adjust outside normal ranges. The result: the brain becomes increasingly unable to derive pleasure from anything except heroin. The cup of coffee that once tasted great now seems bland. Your favorite song now feels meaningless. Family members now feel distant. Everything that once brought joy now only reminds you that you have known a feeling 1,000,000 times better, and you can never reach it again. Comparison is the thief of joy, and now you have an entire lifetime to compare against that supernova of happiness. You withdraw from relationships. You isolate. Social isolation is both a consequence and a coping mechanism. You are trapped inside a prison of your own brain, unable to connect with anything that could truly make you feel good. But the brain is not the only organ under attack. Heroin sends shockwaves throughout the entire body. When you see the full domino effect, you realize this is not a drug that affects the brain and stops there. This is a whole body event. Let's start with the respiratory system, because this is the organ system that kills. Deep inside your brainstem, in the medulla, there is a small cluster of neurons called the pre-Botzinger complex. You have never heard its name, but you are alive because of it right now. It generates your automatic breathing rhythm, every breath you take without thinking about it. Heroin, through morphine, binds to mu-opioid receptors right in this cluster and inhibits it. Research by Montandon and colleagues in the Journal of Neuroscience in 2011 proved that opioids at the pre-Botzinger complex can cause life-threatening respiratory depression or apnea, and states of anesthesia or deep sleep are particularly vulnerable. A 2020 study in eLife confirmed that opioids inhibit breathing through two small sites in the brainstem. Normally, when CO2 in your blood rises, the brain orders stronger breathing. That reflex keeps you alive. Opioids disrupt this reflex. Your brain loses the ability to recognize that you are oxygen deprived. Research by Kiatkin on PMC in 2017 showed that intravenous heroin causes rapid brain hypoxia, and the terrifying part is that this hypoxia occurs before the brain's metabolic response, meaning your brain becomes oxygen-starved before it even realizes it is being starved. This is the killing mechanism in overdose. The heart does not stop first. The lungs stop breathing first. The brain is deprived of oxygen. Then brain damage or death follows. And this is what makes opioid overdose especially dangerous. The process is painless. Your chest rises and falls like gentle ocean wave, then slows, then stops. Overdose victims often do not know they are dying. They cannot call for help. Naloxone, the opioid overdose reversal drug, works by competing at the mu receptor, pushing the opioid out and restoring breathing, but only if administered in time. Next is the cardiovascular system. A 2023 transcriptomic and metabolomic analysis on PMC showed that heroin causes intracellular calcium overload in heart muscle cells, leading to arrhythmias, prolonged action potential duration, and altered myocardial contractility. But a large part of cardiovascular damage does not come from heroin itself, but from accompanying behaviors. Chronic intravenous injection causes collapsed veins, forcing users to inject into more dangerous sites like the neck or groin. Lack of sterile injection technique introduces bacteria into the bloodstream. causing infective endocarditis and infected heart valves, a condition that may require open heart surgery to treat. Deep vein thrombosis from vascular damage is another complication. Heroin also attacks the immune system through two pathways simultaneously. The direct pathway. Heroin binds to opioid receptors on immune cells themselves, suppressing NK cell function, altering white blood cell function, activating tyrosine kinase in non-neuronal cells, causing brain inflammation, and releasing histamine. The indirect pathway, high-risk behaviors, especially needle sharing. About 70 to 80% of new hepatitis C cases in the US each year are due to injection drug use. The result is a double spiral. Immunity weakened by heroin itself, combined with continuous exposure to pathogens through shared needles, leading to HIV, hepatitis B, and hepatitis C. The digestive and endocrine systems are not spared either. Heroin inhibits intestinal motility, causing chronic constipation, one of the most common but least talked about side effects. The HPA axis is disrupted. Animal studies show ATTH increased 64 to 104% and glucocorticoids increased 79 to 198% in self-administered heroin groups compared to controls. In men, heroin causes sexual dysfunction. In women, menstrual cycles become irregular. The liver is attacked from two sides. Direct damage from heroin and hepatitis C from shared needles, progressing to cirrhosis and liver failure if untreated. The kidneys face the risk of rhabdomyolysis, when proteins from broken down muscle tissue enter and destroy the kidneys. And finally, heroin does not only attack internal organs. It affects the entire surface where your body contacts the outside world. Tooth decay and swollen gums from chronic dry mouth. Heroin suppresses saliva production, combined with poor nutrition and neglected hygiene. Skin infections and abscesses at injection sites. Constant itching from heroin-induced histamine release, leading to scratching and chronic skin damage. Damage to the nasal septum in repeated snorters. When you look at this entire list, from the brainstem to heart valves to immune cells to gums, you see that no organ system escapes. The question is, what happens when heroin suddenly disappears? Everything reverses. Not back to normal, but overshooting in the opposite direction. Like a spring that has been compressed for too long. When released, it does not stop at its original position. It springs way past to the other side. Euphoria becomes extreme dysphoria. Calm becomes anxiety as if disaster is imminent. Pain relief becomes unexplained bone and muscle aches. Slowed intestines become abdominal cramps, diarrhea, and vomiting. Drowsiness becomes restlessness and insomnia. Slowed heart becomes rapid heartbeat, sweating, and shortness of breath. Every withdrawal symptom is the exact opposite of a heroin effect. Your system becomes hyperactivated and makes you pay for every second of peace that heroin bought. And the mechanism behind this can be traced to a specific cluster of neurons. The locus ceruleus, abbreviated LC, is the main norepinephrine production center in your brain. Normally, opioids inhibit the LC, reducing norepinephrine and keeping you calm and reducing pain. With chronic use, the LC adapts by increasing baseline activity to compensate. When heroin suddenly disappears, the LC loses its brakes and explodes. A 2024 study in Nature Communications showed that LC neurons projecting to the spinal cord become hyperactive during morphine withdrawal, raising norepinephrine levels in the cerebrospinal fluid far above normal. The result is a chronic fight-or-flight state. Anxiety, restlessness, insomnia, sweating, increased heart rate, elevated blood pressure. Not lasting a few minutes but continuously, day after day. And there is one more phenomenon that very few people know about. Hyperalgesia, amplified pain. When the pain system has been suppressed by opioids for too long, it does not just return to normal when opioids are absent. It lowers the pain threshold below normal. You feel more pain than someone who has never used heroin. Real pain, not imagined, measurable by pain threshold tests. A 2022 study in eNeuro showed that hyperalgesia during heroin withdrawal involves activation in the lateral hypothalamus, central amygdala, VTA, dorsal raphe, and locus ceruleus. Acute symptoms last 24 to 72 hours, but protracted withdrawal, insomnia, anhedonia, dysphoria, cravings, can last weeks to months, and this is the period of highest relapse risk. And throughout that time, there are cravings, screaming inside your head, telling you to end it all right now. Your brain and body are begging for a dose. You can stay in this state for up to 2 weeks, or you can end it immediately with a dose of heroin. And that is the trap. Withdrawal causes pain. Heroin relieves the pain. Use again. Withdraw again. A loop where each cycle tightens more than the last. There are three things most people misunderstand about heroin addiction, because these misunderstandings are not only scientifically wrong, they actively harm people trying to get out. Misunderstanding 1. Addiction is a willpower problem. It sounds logical. If you want to stop badly enough, you will stop. But here is what biology shows. The prefrontal cortex, the organ responsible for decision-making, impulse control, and stopping harmful behavior, is structurally degraded by heroin itself. Koob and Volkow pointed out in Lancet Psychiatry 2016 that the third stage of the addiction cycle, preoccupation and anticipation, is the stage of executive dysfunction in the prefrontal cortex. That means the very organ you need to escape addiction is the first one destroyed by the addiction. Asking an addict to use willpower to quit heroin is like asking a person with a broken arm to set their own bone using the same broken arm. It is not a lack of willpower, it is a lack of tools. Misunderstanding 2. Addicts choose pleasure over responsibility, that they are enjoying themselves while neglecting family, work, and life. But as I explained, after the early stage, the motivation is no longer seeking pleasure. It is escaping dysphoria. They are not using heroin to feel amazing. They are using it to feel normal, to escape the state their brain now considers baseline, a state that someone who has never been addicted would call hell. PET images from Volkow's lab showed D2 receptor density decreasing over time with addiction, meaning natural joy is gradually turned off, light by light, until heroin is the only light still working in the reward system. When you are addicted, seeking and using more heroin becomes the sole purpose in life. Not because they want it to be, but because their brain no longer has the ability to want anything else. Misunderstanding 3. Once you get through withdrawal, it's over. That if you survive the acute withdrawal phase, you're free. But the neurological changes heroin creates do not disappear after 72 hours. Protracted withdrawal, insomnia, anhedonia, dysphoria, cravings last weeks to months after stopping. This is the period of highest relapse risk, not because the person is weak, but because their brain has not yet recovered. NIDA defines addiction as a chronic brain disorder, not a moral failure. And there is a technical detail here that many people do not know, and that kills. After a period of abstinence, the body's tolerance drops quickly. Many deaths occur not the first time using heroin, but upon relapse, when the addict uses the same dose they once tolerated, but their body has lost tolerance and that dose is now lethal. If you look at an addict and think they lack willpower, it is not because you lack empathy. It is because you have never seen their brain on a scanner. When you see those images, judgment disappears. Biology replaces it. The mechanism that creates addiction and the mechanism that creates recovery are the same mechanism. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewrite itself, works in both directions. Heroin used it to rewrite the brain toward dependence. But the same mechanism can rewrite it in the opposite direction. More slowly, more difficultly, but it is real and measurable. Brain imaging studies show white matter beginning to recover after many months of abstinence. Prefrontal cortex function gradually improves. Cognitive abilities, decision-making and impulse control, the things heroin weakened, begin to return within a few months of sustained sobriety. The brain does not erase the history of addiction. It cannot. But it builds new neural pathways, and if those new pathways are reinforced long enough, they become stronger than the old ones. Recovery is not returning to the old you. It is building a new version of the brain on the foundation of the old one. And modern medicine has tools to support that process. Medication-assisted treatment, MAT, is the most researched pharmacological treatment for opioid addiction. Methadone is a long-acting mu-opioid agonist. It occupies receptors stably, without creating a rush, prevents withdrawal and reduces cravings without the ups and downs of each dose. Buprenorphine is a partial agonist that activates receptors only partially with a ceiling effect. Increasing the dose beyond a point does not create more effect, making it significantly safer than full opioids and reducing overdose risk. Naltrexone is an antagonist that completely blocks the receptors, meaning if the patient uses heroin while on naltrexone, heroin produces no effect at all. NIDA has summarized that pharmacological treatment increases retention in programs, reduces drug use, reduces transmission of infectious diseases, and reduces criminal behavior. This is not replacing one addiction with another. This is evidence-based medicine treating a chronic brain disorder. But I want to be honest with you about one thing. Recovery is extremely difficult. Many people need multiple attempts before succeeding. Many people never quit completely. Success rates for traditional 12-step programs can be as low as 5 to 10% according to research by Dr. Lance Dodds in the book The Sober Truth. I am not saying this to make you lose hope. I am saying it because this is why recovery needs evidence-based medical support, a supportive environment, time, and more than just willpower. The digestive system is also part of the recovery process that few mention. The gut microbiome disrupted by chronic opioids can begin to rebalance within a few weeks with dietary changes, a small but real part of the whole body recovery picture. Humanity has built a massive system because of heroin's consequences: prisons, emergency rooms, rehab centers, drug courts, prevention campaigns. Some of it is necessary. Some people have conditions far beyond what any video can reach. But I think it is worth asking, how many of those consequences could be changed if we understood the mechanism earlier? If biology replaced judgment, if treatment replaced punishment? And the current context makes this question even more urgent. Heroin is no longer the only threat. Fentanyl, 50 times stronger than heroin, has infiltrated the entire illicit drug market, mixed into cocaine, counterfeit pills, even medications that users do not know contain opioids. Between 2013 and 2023, fentanyl killed about 400,000 Americans. Overdose deaths have become the leading cause of death for Americans under 50. The mechanism of heroin and the mechanism of fentanyl are the same mu-opioid receptors, the same pre-Bötzinger complex, the same disinhibition at the VTA, the same locus coeruleus flipping into reverse during withdrawal. Understanding heroin means understanding why this crisis cannot be stopped with slogans. Now I want to talk about the system inside. Your brain has 86 billion neurons. It has a self-operating reward system, a self-regulating stress system, a self-calibrating pain system. These systems have been operating inside you for millions of years of evolution before heroin ever existed, and they will continue operating after you finish reading these lines. Heroin does not destroy those systems, it rewrites them. And that difference is more important than you think, because what has been rewritten can be rewritten again. If you are struggling, or you know someone who is struggling, I want you to hear this. The brain is not broken. It has been changed by a substance with a pharmacological mechanism so powerful that an entire century of scientific research has not yet fully decoded it. That change can be reversed, slowly, miserably, truly. And if you are looking at someone who is addicted and wondering why they can't just stop, I hope after everything we have gone through today, that question now carries an entirely different meaning. Because you now know that heroin rewrote the prefrontal cortex, exactly the place that creates the ability to stop. Your brain woke up with you this morning. It is running billions of calculations every second without you even knowing. It regulates your breathing, balances your emotions, keeps your heart beating at the right rhythm, all without you having to think about it. And it has the ability to rebuild what has been rewritten if it is supported, given time, and understood correctly. That is not empty hope, that is neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity is biology. If this video changed how you view heroin and addiction, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. We will continue to dive deep into the biology behind topics that few explain all the way to the mechanism. Thank you for watching until the end, and see you in the next video.